Hat, sunglasses, Pepsi, notes, sources, thick skin, check. You already know. Let's go. Golden Blued is a college football YouTube channel for entertainment. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into our next college football video. Alright, on today's video, we're going to talk about conference mergers. And FYI, this particular video is simply just for entertainment, because that's my job, to entertain you. Are you not entertained with my videos? If not, then I guess don't watch the videos. But if you're still there, then you understand what I'm trying to do here. I am not predicting any of these conference mergers. I'm just talking about them, okay? Let's get into it. And I wanted to talk about the Group of 5 conferences and the Power 5 conferences, not just the Power 5 conferences. I don't think the Group of 5 conferences get enough love. We've already heard about the ASUN and the WAC merging, and they're going to be bumped up to the FCS. So that got me to thinking, what if some of these other conferences decided to merge? Well, first off, let me be clear. The Big Ten, I don't think there's any way they merge with anybody under any circumstances. That will never happen. Same with the SEC. I don't think they will ever merge with anybody under any circumstance, simply because they will never need to. Now, for the Group of 5 conferences, I don't think the MAC will ever merge with anybody either. The MAC has zero interest in merging with anybody. The members of the MAC are very happy with the way things are, so I don't think they're ever going to merge with anybody. They like how the MAC is. So let's get to the conferences that actually could merge. Not will, but could. So the remaining 4 Group of 5 conferences, not counting the MAC, are Conference USA, the AAC, Mountain West, and Sun Belt. Conference USA, they're basically treading water. They lost a bunch of members to the AAC, and the remaining members were Western Kentucky, Middle Tennessee, UTEP, FIU, and Louisiana Tech. But they went out and got some teams. In 2023, Liberty, Sam Houston State, Jacksonville State, New Mexico State, they will all join Conference USA. And then in 2024, Kennesaw State will join Conference USA. So the number will be 10. That's barely a conference, and there's really no names that really pop out that scream, man, that's a great brand. Although Liberty, it was a head scratcher that they joined Conference USA. I would have rather seen them join either the AAC or the Sun Belt. So is there any possibility that Conference USA merges with anybody? Well, if they do, I actually think it would be the Mountain West. I think that would make the most sense. I don't think the AAC would want anything to do with Conference USA. Same with the Sun Belt. And if Conference USA and the Mountain West join, that would turn into a coast-to-coast conference. Mountain West has Boise State, Wyoming, Utah State, Air Force, Colorado State, New Mexico, Fresno State, San Diego State, San Jose State, UNLV, Hawaii, and Nevada. And this is counting, or assuming, I should say, that none of these members leave. I mean, maybe the Pac-12 is interested in Boise State, I don't know, Fresno State, San Diego State, maybe an Air Force, maybe Wyoming, out of sheer necessity. So the Mountain West could actually lose some of their members, and that would make this merger even more likely. So yes, I do think that there's a possibility, not very likely, but a possibility that Conference USA and the Mountain West could eventually merge if the Pac-12 does in fact start picking off some members from the Mountain West. And that's a real possibility. That leaves us with the AAC and the Sun Belt. I don't think either one of those conferences would ever merge with Conference USA or the Mountain West. But could they merge with each other? Well, both conferences have 14 members, and if they merged, that would be a super mega Group of 5 conference of 28 members. I don't think that would ever happen as is, but if some of their members got picked off, I think those two conferences match each other perfectly. The AAC has Tulane, SMU, Navy, East Carolina, Memphis, Tulsa, Temple, South Florida, UTSA, North Texas, UAB, FAU, Rice, and Charlotte. And of course, the Sun Belt now looks like this: James Madison, Coastal Carolina, Marshall, Georgia Southern, Appalachian State, Georgia State, Old Dominion, Troy, South Alabama, Southern Miss, Louisiana, UL Monroe, Texas State, and Arkansas State. And I do think eventually that the AAC could lose teams like a Tulane, a Navy, an East Carolina, a Memphis, maybe a South Florida. They're higher brands if the ACC needs to pick off some teams from the Group of 5 in order for them to exist. Because I think the ACC is also in danger of getting picked apart, because I'm hearing that those 8 teams needed to vote to dissolve the grant of rights do in fact exist. And that's counting Notre Dame. Remember, the ACC gave Notre Dame a nuke vote. So it's very possible that the ACC goes after some teams in the AAC in order to stay alive. But even with that, the merger between the AAC and the Sun Belt would still have about 20 members. So that's still a pretty good looking Group of 5 conference. Would that be enough to bump them up to power status? I'm not sure about that, because the brands remaining are still Group of 5 brands. Remember, just sheer numbers doesn't guarantee that you get bumped up to Power 5 status. So moving on to the power conferences. Remember, I said the Big Ten, the SEC, never merging with anybody because they simply just don't need to. What about the remaining three? The ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac 12. The ACC has Clemson, Florida State, Syracuse, Louisville, NC State, Wake Forest, Boston College, North Carolina, Pitt, Duke, Georgia Tech, Miami Hurricanes, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. But remember what I said earlier. I do in fact think that those 8 teams needed to vote to dissolve the ACC do in fact exist, counting Notre Dame. So that's one vote if you count Notre Dame. The 7 other votes I think would be Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Duke, Georgia Tech, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. Some will go to the Big Ten, and some will go to the SEC. So the remaining teams will be Syracuse, Louisville, NC State, Wake Forest, Boston College, Pitt, and Miami. So the first possible merger, and in the past it was actually rumored that it was possible, is the ACC and the Pac-12. How would that look? You'd have Syracuse, Louisville, NC State, Wake Forest, Boston College, Pitt, Miami, Washington, Oregon, Utah, Oregon State, Washington State, Arizona, Cal, Arizona State, Stanford, and Colorado. So yes, you would have a coast-to-coast conference, but I don't think that fits very well. Yes, they are academic peers, but remember, at this point, the ACC has been whittled down. So if these remaining teams have a better option, they're going to take the better option. So is this possible? Absolutely, it is possible. But it depends on if those remaining teams in the ACC have a better choice. The next possible merger is the Pac-12 with the Big 12. Remember, the Big 12 loses Oklahoma and Texas, but they gain BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston. So the Big 12 looks like this: TCU, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Kansas, West Virginia, Iowa State, BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston. So the merger would look like this, and it is a pretty decent looking conference. Washington, Oregon, Utah, Oregon State, Washington State, Arizona, Cal, Arizona State, Stanford, Colorado, TCU, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Kansas, West Virginia, Iowa State, BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston. This is assuming that the Pac-12 doesn't get picked apart, that the 10 remaining members remain intact. This would be a 22-member conference, but if Oregon and Washington were to get called up to the Big Ten, then it would be a 20-member conference. Still a pretty good looking conference. I actually think that it's more likely that the Big 12 picks off from the Pac-12 than actually merges. Then there's the last merger, and I really like this merger. I actually hope that it happens. The last merger is the Big 12 and the ACC. Honestly, it makes so much sense. I'm thinking, why hasn't this happened? And I know there's a million reasons why it actually hasn't happened, but still, it looks great on paper. So the merger between the remaining teams of the ACC and the Big 12 would look like this: TCU, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Kansas, West Virginia, Iowa State, BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, Syracuse, Louisville, NC State, Wake Forest, Boston College, Pitt, and Miami. I think out of all these merger possibilities, this specific merger would make the most money for both parties involved because you'd have embedded rivalries. You add West Virginia and even Cincinnati into the mix with the remaining members of the ACC. And those are great rivalries, and people will want to watch those rivalries. So that in and of itself would make more money than these other conference mergers. I think geographically it makes sense. Academically, there is a little bit of a separation, but not much. It's close enough. I mean, the ACC accepted Louisville, so that kind of bridged the gap. But culturally, these two conferences would fit together perfectly. I think this conference merger actually needs to happen, especially as a West Virginia fan. Hey, if we're not going to the ACC, the next best thing is to bring our rivals into the Big 12 or just merge with the ACC. I would be most certainly happy with that. I would be thrilled with that, actually. So y'all let me know in the comments section. Number 1, do you think any of these mergers ever happen? Number 2, if so, which of these mergers do you think would be most likely to happen? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.